Professional Teaching Standards, Grand Canyon University, and I am Alicia Pickens Smith. Effective teachers analyze professional teaching standards and utilize academic standards to inform their professional responsibilities and to design appropriate curriculum. In preparation for a career in teaching, we will be researching professional standards from the Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium standards and the NSTA, which is the National Science Teaching Association. So what is INTASC? The Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium, INSTAC, is a resource for ongoing teacher development, which was established by the Council of Chief State School Officers, which is the CCSSO. INTAC standards were formerly called INTAC principles. INTAC standards were support tools used to promote and improve teaching effectiveness and their growth. What is NSTA? NSTA is the National Science Teaching Association. NSTA serves as an advocate for science educators by helping to raise the profile of science education, to promote respect and ensure investment that supports an equitable, high-quality science education. NSTA partners with programs and create strategies that will assist educators create a world where science literacy and education are recognized as vital to the future. History. So the history of INTEC in 2011, the Council of Chief State School Officer, which is CCSSO, a nonpartisan nationwide nonprofit organization of public officials who head departments of elementary and secondary education, drafted the INTEC Model Core Teaching Standards. INTEC was established to provide support to new teachers and raise the level of learning in the United States classrooms. To reach these goals, 10 standards were created, and each standard requires teachers to possess and use essential knowledge required to meet these goals. History of NSTA. NSTA originated in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on July 4th, 1944. It was created by a merger of the American Council of Science Teachers and the American Science Teachers Association, both which ceased to exist after the merger. At the time, the organization had approximately 2,000 members combined. NSTA's mission is to promote excellence and innovation in science teaching and learning for all. The National Science Teaching Association, or NSTA, is headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. Are 10 INSTAC standards, and we're going to look at each of those. Standard 1, learner development. This states that the teacher understands how the learners grow and develop, and recognizing that patterns of learning and development vary individually within and across cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical areas, and designs and implements developmentally appropriate and challenging learning experiences. So to me, this basically means that this standard, as a teacher, that I will need to develop different lessons and come up with different instruction to include all of my students. And I will need to keep in mind that each of my students will develop differently. So I have to take those types of learning methods into consideration when I'm doing my lesson planning. So this standard also refers to any student that I may encounter that has special needs, and make sure that I offer a differentiated lesson whenever possible. And it's my goal to always to become knowledgeable of all of my students' academic level and make sure I'm providing support and any additional assistance when possible. Standard 2, learning differences. So the teacher uses understanding of individual differences and diverse cultures and communities to ensure inclusive learning environments that enables each learner to meet high standards. So my interpretation is that I will expect to have in my classroom students from different cultural backgrounds and different environments. So each of my students will definitely bring to the table different life experiences, as well as each of them will may have a different learning process where they will have strengths and weaknesses. And as a professional educator, it is my responsibility to support each of my students' process of development with appropriate instruction level. Standard 3 is learning environments. The teacher works with others to create environments that support individual and collaborative learning and that encourages positive social interaction, active engagement in learning, and self motivation. So, my interpretation is that I need to make sure that I am providing a safe and a happy environment where my students feel comfortable with sharing learning ideas and their thoughts. And it will always be my goal to encourage my students not to judge or to compete with one another while they're working in groups or even if they're working independently, so that each student will be able to learn to work as well as be able to collaborate with one another. Four is content knowledge. So it states that the teacher uses central concepts, tools of inquiry, and central concepts of the discipline that he or she teaches and creates learning experiences that makes these aspects of the discipline accessible and meaningful for learners to assure mastery of the content. So to me, this means that in order for me to benefit my students and to be able to reach them, each of them in their different learning styles, I need to have mastered my subject before I teach it to them. As a teacher, I also need to recognize at what level of proficiency that each of my students using aggressive monitoring so that I can best support their learning. Standard 5 is the application of the content. It states that the student understands how to connect concepts and using differing perspectives to engage the learner in critical thinking, creativity, and collaborative problem solving related to authentic local and global issues. So, my interpretation is as a teacher, I will offer to my students different opportunities to be engaged in an active learning process inside as well as outside of my classroom. I will provide them with a variety of activities like hands-on activities, individual activities, and even collaborative activities that will encourage them to develop their social skills, their problem solving, as well as their critical thinking skills. Standard 6 is the standard assessment. So the teacher understands and uses multiple methods of assessment to engage learners in their own growth, to monitor learning progress, and to guide the teachers and the learners' decision making. So that means that by observing and measuring my students' learning process, that will guide me to know how each of my students are doing in their learning processes. So that means I will constantly assess my students and use different types of assessments like bell work, exit tickets, check for understandings, things like that. And I will use my assessments to gather information and analyze evidence to monitor my students' learning and mastery of any particular standard to implement any new reteach strategies that I may need to incorporate to help increase my mastery levels. Standard 7 is planning for instruction, and it states that the teacher plans instruction that supports every student in meeting rigorous learning goals by drawing upon knowledge of content areas, curriculum, cross-disciplinary skills, and purgatory, as well as knowledge of learners and the community context. So I will need to focus on developing a lesson plan based on the curriculum and according to my students. I will need to provide to my students an appropriate learning experience according to their age limits or their age groups, and to their personal needs. As a teacher, I will need to keep in mind that students have a comprehensive understanding of what they are learning when educators reflect good organization and good planning. Standard 8 is the instructional strategies, and it states that the teacher understands and uses a variety of instructional strategies to encourage students to develop deep understanding of content areas and their connections, and to build skills to apply knowledge in meaningful ways. So, as a teacher, I will need to include a variety of strategies in order to engage my students in learning. Effective instructional strategies help me to meet all of my learning styles and development needs of my learners. So, with my lessons, I want to provide my students with the opportunity to develop any critical thinking and problem solving skills. So, I will use questions to encourage my students to analyze, synthesize, and even evaluate information and facts. Standard 9. Professional learning and ethical practice states that the teacher engages in ongoing professional learning and uses evidence to continually evaluate his or her practice, particularly the effects of his or her choices and the actions of others, whether that's a learning, the families, other professionals, and the community, and adapts practice to meet the needs of each of the learner. So I interpret this to mean that I will openly communicate with my parents, with the students, and with my coworkers to get constant feedback on my teaching strategies. I will continuously reflect upon my instruction on how it is reaching each of my students also. And that means that I will need to attend trainings, workshops, different courses to continue gaining knowledge and growing professionally. Standard 10 states, Standard 10 entitled Learning and Collaboration, and it states that the teacher seeks appropriate leadership roles and opportunities to take responsibility for student learning, to collaborate with learners, families, colleagues, and other school professionals and community members to ensure learner growth and to advance the profession. So I interpret this to mean that it is vital to communicate with my families, with the colleagues, with other school professionals, and even the community members in order to improve my students' learning process. So the main focus is to get different opinions and perspectives in order to make sure I'm helping each of my students to grow socially, emotionally, and academically. So I will seek out opportunities to become a role model in the classroom and set a positive example for my students. All right, so the 5 NSTA principles. All right, so the first principle is entitled The Importance of Promoting the Growth of All Students. So to provide quality science education for all students, NSTA recommends that science educators do the following: that they show respect for each individual and value his or her identity and cultural heritage, recognize the abilities and strengths of students as well as their unique learning needs, model and emphasize the skills, attitudes, and the values of scientific inquiry, help students reflect as learners, and use skills of inquiry to become effective problem solvers. Display and demand respect for diverse ideas, skills, and experiences of all the students. Structure and facilitate ongoing formal and informal discussions based on shared understandings of rules of scientific discourse. Orchestrate discourse among students about scientific ideas. And to me, that kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just speaking about with our standard 1 and 2. Principle 2 states the importance of taking personal responsibility for professional growth and to uphold the highest professional standard. NSTA recommends that science educators do these 3 things: promote their own that promote their own personal, professional development and recognize that becoming an effective teacher of science is a continuous process that requires a commitment to lifelong learning. Stay current on the literature in science and picatory and strive to be reflective practitioners who generate new knowledge and share that knowledge with others. And lastly, seek out formal and informal opportunities to learn, such as becoming active in professional associations, organizing and attending conferences, taking courses and seminars, reading professional publications, visiting other classrooms, and interacting with colleagues, mentors, and coaches to support their personal growth. Principle 3 is the importance of being leaders in the profession. So, to promote the professional both inside and outside of the classroom, teachers of science should be active learners promoting collaboration among colleagues, parents, and other members of the community. So, NSTA recommends that science educators do the following: promote collaboration among colleagues in schools and in the larger communities of science educators to share ideas, discuss problems, and support one another to improve their practice. Serve as mentors and coach to support initial and ongoing professional development of beginning teachers of science. Promote the improvement of science education by being active leaders in professional organizations at the local, state, and the national levels. Foster positive partnerships with parents to support and enhance student growth and success in science, include helping parents to understand the goals of science education at our school, the district level, state, and the national levels, and recognize that there are needs for scientific literacy on a global level. Work with partnership with schools, district, and community members to gain a greater understanding of the cultural fabric of the community and its relationship to achieve quality science education for all students. And lastly, reflect a professional image to the students, parents, and the community through appropriate speech, attire, and actions. Principle 4 is the importance of upholding personal and professional ethics. And as a leader of students, teachers of science must uphold the highest standards of ethical behavior and be positive role models. So, NSTA recommends that science educators conduct themselves as responsible and ethical citizens in school and community environments and activities, as well as protect, respect, and empower all students. Last principle, principle 5, is support for professional teachers of science. Science educators need full support and active participation of school and community leaders, district administrators, school boards, parents, and students to meet their responsibilities effectively. So NSTA recommends that these stakeholders work together to secure a professional, safe work environment and appropriate support to allow science educators to teach and grow effectively. Provide all teachers of science with adequate time for planning, interacting, and collaborating with colleagues and with other stakeholders in the schools and community. Secure adequate resources and materials to teach science effectively in the classroom. Ensure that all teachers, especially those who are new to the profession, receive a reasonable workload and adequate time for preparation, and secure time and resources for effective and continuous professional development opportunities and support for all teachers of science throughout their career. So as we approach our last slide is our references. And I have listed all of the references that I use in order to obtain information listed in this particular PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for your time and attention.